Welcome to Your Yes Filled Life. I'm Brenda Winkle, energetic leadership guide, psychic medium, and somatic coach for ambitious leaders who know their gifts are real and who want to stand fully in them. Here, you'll learn how to trust your intuition, embody your vision, and step into the freedom you've been craving, all without chasing more certifications or carrying stuff that does not belong to you. Every week, I'll share powerful practices and conversations with thought leaders and changemakers that help you transform your vision into embodied confidence, claim your gifts without apology, and lead with both clarity and freedom. Because your gifts aren't cute, they're powerful, they're real, and they're needed. Start today by downloading my free energy audit at brendawinkle.com/audit. It's the exact tool I use to track what's fueling me and what's draining me. It will help you discern between that hit of achievement and true joy so that you can lead with more clarity and impact. This is your space to stop proving, start embodying, and live fully in your gifts. Welcome to Your Yes-Filled Life. Hello, and welcome to Your Yes Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, psychic medium, intuitive guide, Reiki master teacher, trauma informed breathwork facilitator, and somatic coach who is currently having a throat chakra activation. Oh my goodness. Not sure what's going on here, but at any rate, hello, and welcome to Your Yes Filled Life. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, psychic medium, intuitive guide, trauma informed somatic coach, and breathwork facilitator, and Reiki master teacher, among a few other things. Now, today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about what is somatics. What's a somatic session? How can it help you? Why would you want to add this to your life, either as a client or as a practitioner? So let's dive in just right away. There's a moment that happens for almost every intuitive practitioner, whether you're working in the intuitive arts or not. And it's when you can kind of sense the conversation that's happening underneath the conversation. You feel it in your client's field. You can see it in subtle changes in their body language. You can even hear it in the way that their voice pattern changes, how grounded they are, whether they're in self-doubt and they're up here talking in the rafters, or they're really feeling grounded and confident. You can feel it, hear it, see it, sense it. You probably, because you're able to get these kind of awarenesses, and my guess is if you're listening to this podcast, this happens to you, whether you're a practitioner, an educator, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, a healer, a facilitator, a coach, my guess is you can feel and sense things before anyone explains them to you. You can sense a direction, you have strong intuitive hits. And when you're working in your zone of genius, whatever that is, you don't take any excuses from anyone. You don't need explanations. You don't need to look things up. You just go because you know intuitively that you can trust your inner guidance because you're working in your zone of genius. And if your zone of genius happens to be in one of your intuitive gifts, then it makes it so easy. And you probably don't even realize you're doing it because it's happening so effortlessly for you. Like, let me tell you about one of my clients. One of my clients is a pediatrician, and she is the head of a department in a mid-sized city's hospital system. And she also guides residents, and she's in the clinic. She actually works with patients, but then she's guiding and teaching and mentoring residents in her hospital as well. And when she's at work, she doesn't second guess one thing. She just goes from situation to situation, from patient to patient, and she never stops to overthink anything. She just moves because it's her zone of genius. And as we've been working together one on one over this past year, we have really begun to map out how her unique intuition comes in so that she can apply this to other areas of her life. And she has incredible intuitive wisdom. And it's been so fun to watch her really begin to believe in her own intuitive abilities and to see that her intuitive abilities are not only affecting her work, but they're affecting her personal life. And because she's learning to trust that what's happening is truly intuition and connection to something greater than herself, she's also trusting the nudges in her personal life. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us will lean one direction with our intuition where we really, really trust it and where we don't second guess it, we don't overthink it, we just do the thing that we're guided to do. And then we have these other areas in our lives where we are overthinking. We're second guessing. We're making decisions by committee, asking everyone what they think. And what I would love to do is to create a little bit more uniformity for you where you can trust your intuition across your life. And that's what this conversation today is about. So, if you're really tuned into intuition, there's this subtle but very solid knowing that you'll feel, sense, know, see, or hear, depending on how your intuition comes in for you. And if we begin to overthink that and we add the mental field or the intellectualism or your intelligence to it, it can get messy instead of more clear. And when that happens, that creates a lot of doubt that you can trust your intuition. And so if you're holding space for others, whether you are a teacher, a parent, a physician, a nurse, a coach, a healer, if you're in that space where you begin to second guess your intuition, what can happen is whatever you're doing begins to drift just a little off center. So let's say, for example, if you're a coach or a healer and you have these intuitive nudges coming through where you can begin to see and feel and sense and hear one of those, or maybe all what the conversation under the conversation is, but you don't acknowledge it. What can happen is that the session can go in a direction that's not actually what the client needs. And let me give you an example. I recently had a client come in, and she's a longtime client. I absolutely love working with her. She is, she wants to be a writer, and over this past year, she has begun to embody being a writer. In fact, she even says now, "I'm a writer," and this is really important because I have sensed for about 2.5 years that this was what she wanted. But we needed to move at the pace her nervous system and her body felt safe to move. So I could see and sense that she wanted to be a writer. If I would have pushed her and I would have said to her 2.5 or 3 years ago when we started working together, "Hey, I think you want to be a writer, and here's what I think you should do," she may have shut down. And the reason she might have shut down is her nervous system could have became or become activated. And what that looks like is when we're in a nervous system activation, I'm using my somatic language, which probably isn't making a ton of sense. So let me ground it into everyday talk. Her nervous system, her body would have interpreted me pushing as a threat. And if you've ever been kind of pushed in a direction, even if you think it's the right direction for you and you've been pushed there, you don't want to go and you'll push back and you'll resist. And if you have ever wanted advice, you wanted, somebody to tell you something, but then they came at it too strongly and it stopped being advice and started being directives. And then you're like, well, no, I'm not doing it. This is that inaction. So what's happening in the body, if we slow it down in that nervous system activation, is that the body is interpreting the new thing, stepping into the new identity. Let's say in this case of this client, stepping into the identity of a writer. because that's very different from what she was trained to do. And it was also very different from anything that she had ever been paid to do in her work. It felt new. And because it felt new, even though in her training and in her work, she was absolutely writing, this felt different because she wasn't writing for something. She was writing from something. She was writing from her lived experience. She's writing from her heart. And so, as she needed to shift her identity from being a teacher, which is what her former occupation used to be, into being a writer, there was an identity shift that needed to happen. And by the way, this happens for all of us. I'm just using her as an example. And then I'm going to tell you about a recent identity shift that I have moved into. So, as she moved from the identity of I was trained as a teacher, I was paid as a teacher, into I'm a writer, every incremental shift, no matter how tiny, the body coded as a threat because it's different, it's a change, and we are biologically programmed to be highly suspect of change. Because if you think about the days back before we had phones or even electricity or running water, we needed to be very observant to our environment. We needed to track the environment for any kind of a change, whether it was a change in the weather or a change in the actual environment, what people or what animals might have been around us that we needed to be aware of because a change could potentially mean a threat. And so we're biologically coded to interpret changes, especially changes in identity, as a threat. And what that does is it puts our body into a stress response. And I've talked a lot on the podcast about how stress impacts you, how it impacts the nervous system. So and there's different maps here, right? So I'm going to use the map of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So, the sympathetic nervous system is the nervous system activation that happens when you are in a stress response. The sympathetic nervous system has a release of stress hormones, for example, cortisol or adrenaline. And the purpose of releasing those stress hormones is to give you the razor sharp clarity, the speed, and the strength to move away from any type of a threat. Okay. So when you're in the parasympathetic state of the nervous system, you're in a stress response. And stress, your body, if you get to a certain point, the tipping point outside of the window of tolerance, meaning outside of what your body can withstand without the stress, before your body's like, ooh, I have to reallocate my resources because I'm not safe. That's what a stress response is. The body's saying, I have to reallocate my resources because I'm not safe. So, what happens is we move from the thinking brain into the brain stem, sometimes known as the reptilian brain or the amygdala. And there we have one focus, and that is to keep ourselves alive. And when we're in that state, our body is going to determine what stress response is going to be the safest thing for us. So the body will choose fight, flight, freeze, or fawn as a stress response. And so in the case of my client who was moving from the identity of a teacher to a writer, every time that she said, I want to be a writer, her body interpreted that as a threat. And so, what we had to do over time was to build capacity in her body so that her body could understand she was safe even as she was stepping into this new identity as a writer. Safe meaning as she took action towards being a writer and as she began to articulate that she was a writer, her body no longer interpreted that as a threat. So the body did not go into a stress response. And when we can, over time, build capacity so that the body doesn't code what you want to do as a threat, you begin to be able to take the actions you want to take. So one of the things that can happen for people is you can really want a new identity. Like, let's say, for example, when I was moving from being a teacher into being what I do now full time as a guide, a coach, a healer, a psychic, a breathwork facilitator, a somatic coach, I went through this too, where my body was activated into a stress response because I was moving away from the familiar into the unfamiliar. And I had to build my body's capacity to understand that I wasn't in danger by shifting into this new identity. And that's what my client, the writer, had to do as well. And it takes time. It does take a certain level of mindset in the sense that you have to use some discipline to not let yourself get stuck in thought loops that are not serving you. But mindset alone will not do it. It won't do it. It just, it's not going to work. And if you've been relying on mindset alone or talk therapy alone or muscling through it alone or reading through books alone, this is why you're not actually moving the needle, because mindset alone won't do it, because mindset alone does not acknowledge what's happening inside the body as far as the stress response. So when I talked about the nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, that's where those stress responses are being triggered inside that sympathetic nervous system. The other, the parasympathetic nervous system, is the rest, digest, and repair. Now, we need both, right? We need both nervous systems. We need all the different hormones that are flowing through us. And the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest, digest, and repair, is where we have the creativity. It's where we have the flow, where we can think about things and assimilate information. And we can also heal our bodies in that state, which is really impactful, because if the changes that you want to make in your life are being coded as a threat, then you're in a stress response. You have more cortisol and adrenaline going through your body. So, like, let's say, for example, you are maybe you're like me, maybe you're a teacher and you're in the 20 something years of teaching, or maybe you're only 5 years in and you want to make a change. And every time you get ready to make a change, you literally freeze and you cannot do it. That is not a lack of willpower. That is not a lack of talent. That is your body's interpretation of what you want to do as being a threat. And so the body goes into the stress response, either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And please go back to listen to other episodes where I explain this more in depth, because it'll be helpful. And the thing I need you to really hear is, we cannot overpower a nervous system that is perceiving there to be a threat. You cannot muscle your way through it. But I see people try all the time. I see it in hustle culture. I see it in the people who want to work more. I've been that person. And so when we talk about working with clients or patients or students, this is so important for us to understand that they're experiencing this too. And so if we are listening to the stress response and we're only responding to what is being said and what is being communicated in the stress response, we're missing out on tons of information, because by nature, the stress response has one primary objective, and that is to stay alive, right? The nervous system is like, I don't want a threat, I want to stay alive. So the nervous system is resisting any change. It's resisting assimilating or synthesizing the new identity or the new changes, which is why habits can be so hard to change, especially when you're in a time or a season of stress. So if I were to have listened to my client, I'm going to give you a really specific example, even of a recent session. She came in and she said that she needed to work on her schedule, on her calendar. And I, in older versions of myself, older meaning former versions, former versions of myself, I would have listened and I would have tried to solve that problem about the schedule. I would have gone down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, Where are you taking time to do the things you want to do? How are you balancing things? How are you approaching time blocking? How are you approaching the actual calendaring? Are you creating for travel time? Are you creating space for integration? I would have asked all those questions. And I do to a certain extent because I don't want to miss something. But if I would have stopped there, I would have missed out on what happened next because I wouldn't have heard or noticed or sensed or felt the conversation under the conversation. And in this particular case, with this particular client, the conversation under the conversation is or was, I'm scared to be a writer. I'm scared to admit I want to be a writer. I'm scared to do the actual writing and to put myself out vulnerably this way, where I'm not writing under the umbrella of another company or under the umbrella of a school. I'm scared. I'm scared of being visible. That was the conversation under the conversation around her schedule. And because I have been doing this work for a long time, because I'm highly trained in somatics and I'm incredibly intuitive with access to all of the six clairs, all the empath tracks, most of the other niche tracks, I knew I could feel, sense, hear, see that the conversation around the schedule wasn't the actual conversation we needed to have. And I used my intuition and my training in trauma informed somatics to gently guide my client into a relaxed nervous system state so that we could feel in her body where the nervous system was feeling a threat. And in this specific case with this specific client, what that meant was she was feeling activation in her belly, which is where the solar plexus chakra lives. And the solar plexus chakra is all about personal power and identity. So, of course, she was having digestive things happen around this. Can you hear my dog, Bentley? If not, Bentley says hi. We are recording this episode from my bedroom. I'm overlooking the beautiful, enormous oak trees across from my house. And my mom is in my spare bedroom, which is also my office. And so Bentley and I are here looking out over the window. And he's guarding us. His nervous system is a little bit activated, which, if you've ever listened to the podcast episode I did with Gia Savoci around dogs, Bentley's nervous system is very stressed. He's very, very highly activated. And my background in energy work, Reiki, somatics, nervous system has been really, really helpful in working with Bentley. But I digress. So if you are a practitioner and your client comes in like my client did, and she said, I'm not writing because of my schedule, and you take that at face value and you don't listen to the conversation underneath the conversation, when you begin to solve the problem that is the surface level problem, the schedule, you're going to find that it doesn't land with your client. You're going to find that any solution that you offer to that client will be met with resistance or, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. And so if you're finding that in your sessions, sorry about that. I'm pretty sure you heard Bentley, and now you're going to hear crinkling. I made a promise to myself to be a lot more authentic in these podcast episodes. And so I'm probably not going to cut this out. So you can listen to me give Bentley his cat treats. And here's a trick for you if you have dogs. Take a handful of treats and then throw them on the floor and call it search. And the dogs love it. Are you ready? Do you want to go search, Bentley? Okay. So Bentley's off on his little search. So as I was saying, if you've been doing this in your sessions, if you've been doing the surface level only conversation and really working on the things that the client come in and say that they want to work on without acknowledging the conversation under the conversation, you're probably finding your clients don't rebook. They're probably leaving your sessions frustrated, and maybe you're frustrated too. And you're probably finding your client retention is lower. You're probably finding that it's difficult for you to sell packages of sessions, and you're probably finding it difficult to create an actual living from doing this work. And this is why. Because when we're solving the surface level problems, that's not actually the problem the client wants to solve. It is the problem that they have access to. It's the problem that is forefront in their brain. And the deeper things are less accessible to all of us. I have my own somatic coach that I visit with every single week. It was my partner, Sheena, from my somatic coaching certification program. We have met weekly for the last 3 years because this work is so profound. And so we meet weekly for somatic coaching, swapping sessions. So I am literally doing this work. And I will also tell you one other thing. I only work with coaches and healers who also have coaches and healers because I feel like we can only lead people as far as we are willing to go. And if I'm not willing to do my own work, why would you want to come work with me? Right? So I take this really seriously. So yes, I'm the beneficiary of doing this work because I definitely feel better. I'm more evolved. I feel like my work goes better. I feel more confident. I'm happier. I'm more grounded, all the things. But I also feel like I'm so much more able to serve clients because I'm doing my own work. And so back to your clients, if you're not able to sell packages, it's because your clients don't trust that you can solve the underlying problem. And the thing is, none of us can see our own nose on our face, right? I mean, you can see part of it, but really you can't see your own nose for your face. So there's a certain point at which you will not be able to go any deeper on your own because your nervous system, remember, has one job, and that's to keep you alive. And anything that the nervous system perceives to be a threat, it is going to shut down. Whether it shuts it down with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, meaning you overbook your calendar so you can't possibly have time to do the writing you want to do. In this client's case, that was happening. Or you find 43 other things that you do instead of writing. That's flight. Like that's when you suddenly decide you have to go reorganize your closet instead of writing, even though you only have this hour to do it, but the closet just must be organized. That's the flight response in action. Or how about this? You get ready to write and then you sit down and you can't think of anything. It's like a blank slate. And so you just eventually give up and go do something else. That's the freeze. Or the fawn shows up because you keep agreeing to do things that take you away from the writing or whatever it is you want to do because you're people pleasing like your life depends on it because your body believes that people pleasing is how you'll stay safe. So this is not happening because you're not highly intuitive. My guess is if you're listening to this podcast, you are highly intuitive. And this isn't an indication that you need more psychic ability. It is because we need to be tracking the conversation under the conversation. And that conversation happens in the body. Now, the term somatic comes from the Greek word soma, which means body. So the root word of somatic is soma. The conversation under the conversation is happening in the body. So if you are a practitioner, a coach, a healer, a guide, a physician, a teacher, and you're only doing the surface level stuff that the client talks about, you're missing everything else that's happening beneath the surface. This would be the unspoken motivations, the unspoken fears, and the nervous system activations that are literally keeping the client stuck because the nervous system perceives the change to be life threatening, so we can't possibly move forward. So, if we're only listening to the story and the words, we are only doing surface level work. And if you've ever worked with somebody and you are the client and you're working with somebody who's doing surface level work, it is frustrating. I've had that happen to me where I knew there was something deeper that I needed to work on. And let me give you a really specific example. I want to be a global speaker. I want to be on stages all over the world in front of live audiences. And that has been a dream on my heart for many years. There was one speaking expert who suggested that I put a Google alert on my phone for speaker applications needed. And so I did. And I had this like calling for speaker application alert that went off for a conference in California, one of their state conferences. And so I put in the application. I submitted the application and I was selected to go speak at this conference in California. And I went to a mentor and I was talking because that's all I could manage about the surface level things. I knew there was something deeper, but I couldn't get to what the deeper thing was on my own because you can't. That's the way the nervous system works. The nervous system's trying to keep me safe. So the nervous system just kept saying, no, don't go do this. And so I was talking about all the objections that I had to doing this conference. And when I went to visit with this mentor, the mentor was meeting me at that surface level. And so I would say a surface level thing about logistics or timing or whatever. And the mentor met me at that surface level. And I felt really frustrated, really unseen, really unheard. And so you can probably relate to this if you ever had someone with you doing surface level work. And it wasn't until my session with Sheena that I realized what was actually feeling in my body, but I needed support to be able to feel safe enough in my body to let it come forward. And the thing that came forward was the conference was misaligned with my values. And it wasn't until I applied for and was accepted to speak at the conference that the values of the conference were really overtly shared with me. And the only thing my mind would allow me to grasp on were the logistics, where it was, when it was, how much it was, all that stuff. That wasn't the actual conversation that I needed to have. I needed to understand there's a value misalignment here. This is not a good idea for me to do because I'm not speaking to my people, because our values don't match. So when that happens, instead of tracking, like let's say it's you and you're the one holding a session for someone else, you'll notice that if it's surface level stuff and you're meeting them at surface level stuff, you will notice that the client stops making eye contact with you. You'll notice tension in their body. You will notice tension in your own body. You'll notice that they get fidgety and they get more and more anxious because they're not able to say, because we don't have language for this, right? It's happening in the subconscious on the nervous system level. They're not able to say, you're not hearing my actual problem, but they can feel it. And you can feel it too. This is not an intuition failure. This is a lack of somatic awareness, and it's a lack of somatic tracking. The body is speaking quietly while the story that's coming out of the mouth is loud. And if you only listen to the story coming out of the mouth, you're missing the majority of the story. Now, let me give you one more example. I had a client who came in and she told me that she wanted to access her intuition. That was her reason for working with me. And as we dove into this work, we were working in a one-on-one capacity. It was very clear to me that she already had substantial intuitive access. I mean, really, really off the charts intuitive access. I could also feel that she had some resistance in her body, in her nervous system, toward activating a life she really wanted to live. And as we worked together and we did somatic exercises in her sessions to activate her intuition, she felt safer and safer and safer in her own body. And as a result, she has now claimed a life that she really wants to be living. And she is still a very highly successful physician. She's doing really, really well. And she's also completely rewriting her personal life. She is allowing herself to love and be loved in a way that is deeply fulfilling to her. And it's for the first time in her life that she's allowing herself to let this love in. And it is so exciting. And so she came in wanting deeper access for intuition. And that was true. She really does and did want intuitive access. But she also wanted to feel safe enough in her body to be able to claim that she loves who she loves. And so when we think about somatic work, it's always about the conversation under the conversation. Let me give you one more example. One of my favorite group clients, I love my group. My group coaching program just closed for 2025. It was called Your Yes Filled Life. It has been sunsetted, but there will be a group coaching program coming in 2026. There's just not information on it yet. But my client came into a session thinking that she needed strategy. She had a lot of ideas. She had a lot of notes written. She had stories. She had an overarching umbrella idea of what really needed to happen in her life, but she didn't have a center. Like there was no middle point. And I could feel and track as I listened to her and I was tapping into what was happening in her body language, in her sensations that she was sharing. Every time she tried to define her why using her mental field or her intellect, her energy scattered and her face tightened, her speaking got faster and her voice got higher. Now that's all information, right? Information for me as the practitioner, as the somatic coach. So instead of trying to help her decide, which is what she came in asking for help with, we slowed down. And when I say we slowed down, I invited her into what I call a drop in. Like, hey, let's drop in for a minute. Meaning, can you slow down, take some breaths, maybe allow your eyes to close. And then as we supported that drop in, we tracked what was happening in the body and she spoke from memory versus her intellect, what her mind was telling her what she should do. The memory in her body landed so clearly that it like her eyes opened up wide and she gasped and she said, I know my purpose. My purpose is to disrupt toxic patterns. Her entire body like lit up. She suddenly sat back. Her shoulders broadened a little bit. She sat taller. Her eyes lit up. She smiled. Her shoulders also lowered a little bit. Her breath deepened. Her voice sounded more grounded. Now, this is not because we did something about branding. It's not even because I solved a specific problem for her. It was not because we changed her mindset. It was because we listened to the somatic truth in her body to find the conversation under the conversation. And this is what somatic tracking actually does for clients if you are interested in being supported in somatic sessions. But as practitioners, this prevents you from coaching the wrong thing. It helps you distinguish between someone's true desire and their defense mechanism. What's keeping them safe? What's keeping them, in the current state of affairs? It also helps you track the true insight versus coaching through their overwhelm. Most of the time, overwhelm isn't overwhelm. It's just like mismatched energy coming in too fast. And you probably feel this in your own body too. And it also, when we are focused on the somatics inside the body, we're able to come at things from an expansive energy instead of trying to solve things like they're an emergency or like there's urgency involved. Because here's the thing, our clients don't need more insight. They need their own bodies to feel safe enough for their truth to come forward. And when that happens, results deepen. And it is a subtle shift, but it's profound and it can cause some pretty dramatic results. Now, when practitioners begin to do this work, here's what we see. We see stronger referrals. We see longer client retention. You'll feel less drained as a practitioner because you're not trying to muscle through or figure it out. You're just listening and guiding. And that also is going to create a level of confidence in your work. And your clients are going to feel the difference. Now, here's another story about somebody. Somebody came in and she had really well developed intuition. She was not somebody who would have said, I'm an intuitive, but she had really well developed intuition. She had a lot of insight. She had very good self awareness. She had a lot of tools, but she was still pushing like things have to happen in a specific way. And in that pushing energy, she was kind of pushing away people that loved her and people that she loved. So in our work, we focus less on doing and more on creating safety for her to pause before she started doing. And something really profound began to happen. It was very simple, but profound. When she allowed herself to rest before big conversations with family members or before big decisions, even in small amounts, she had a different capacity. And she was finding that she wasn't engaging in people pleasing. She was able to speak her truth. She was able to take longer lunches and let herself do things that made her feel good. Like in her case, she sort of liked to do coloring and drawing and writing and different things. And she even was able to watch shows that she liked, like Netflix shows, without guilt. And then here's the really interesting paradox. When she stopped working so hard, her productivity increased. And it wasn't because she was trying harder. It wasn't because she was working harder. It was because her nervous system had capacity. And this is the piece practitioners miss in their own bodies and with their own clients. Because if you don't track capacity, you can accidentally reinforce burnout, even with good intentions. So when you are working somatically with clients, no matter what kind of work you're doing, or students for that matter, your your clients are going to feel safer and they're going to make decisions that feel really aligned for them. You hold less because you're not trying to figure it out. You're not like searching for the solution for them. You are listening and responding to what's happening for them in their bodies by tuning into that conversation under the conversation. And most importantly, and this really is the most important part, integrations happen between the sessions and the changes that happen in session stick. So it's not like two steps forward, one step back. It's like you're able to move forward. Now, I will say, and I do have some clients, and if you're one of them, this is, if you're one of the clients that does this, this is your invitation to stop doing this. If you're not being consistent, if you're like one session here and then 2 months later, one session here, and then 4 months later, one session here, that's not the kind of results we're talking about. Though the results I'm talking about today, they will not come when there's that type of inconsistency. The results come from being consistent enough that there's not enough life events getting on top of the somatic work we're doing that we have to solve for and heal through the life events. So if you're not being consistent with your own way that you're showing up, this is why that's so important. And then this is also why, as a practitioner, you don't want to allow people to do that. It is not for their highest good. We'll talk about that more at the reset retreat. That reset retreat is all about building offers that have people keep coming back. So the bottom line is better outcomes for your clients mean you have a better business. And this is not just hype. This is not branding. This is developing deep trust because you're getting clients the results. And then clients will begin to refer you out. They're referring you out because you're helping them to feel and live differently in a way that feels aligned for them. It's not because you said the right thing or had the right solution. It's because you mirrored them and helped them tune into themselves. This is exactly why I created the Intuitive Somatic Healer certification, because there's so many practitioners out there that have incredible skills, incredible intuition. They already care deeply. You already sense things differently, but you want this precision and you want to do it in an ethical way with confidence. This certification is not about learning more techniques. I mean, you will in a way, but that's not what this is for. This is about learning how to track the conversation under the conversation. It's learning how to pay attention to what's happening in somebody's nervous system by noticing the signals that are happening in the body, the language, the speech, the movement. It's going to make sure that you stay out of projection. We don't want to project on our clients. Last episode is intuition versus projection. If you've ever wondered if a practitioner has projected on you, you know the feeling when you feel like, I don't feel like you're talking to me. I feel like you're talking to yourself. Projection is a problem in intuitive work because if you have any type of empath abilities, it can be really easy to project until you learn to discern your energy from someone else's. And, if you want your clients to get better results, if you want to be able to trust yourself while working less hard, you don't have to figure it out. You just want to support people in a more meaningful way. This program, the intuitive somatic healing certification, it was meant for you. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I'm not a practitioner, but I want these tools for myself, I've got good news for you. In 2026, I'll be launching a program called Heal Myself, and it is a self healing container that includes Reiki, breathwork, meditation, and somatic practices. So stay close and you'll hear more about that as it becomes available. But right now, our primary focus is on the intuitive somatic healing certification. We are enrolling now through January 2nd or until all 20 spots are full, whatever happens first. And this is an amazing opportunity for you to uplevel your skills in a really unique way that is so profound, grounded in ethics, and guided by me. And I can't wait to teach you everything I know about intuition. It's the number one question I'm asked is, how do you know? How do you know this? How do you know this? Well, I'm going to tell you in this program. So I am so grateful for you for listening to today's episode. I'm recording this on December 20th. December 21st is our winter solstice. It is the darkest night of the year. It's the longest night of the year. And it's a beautiful opportunity for you to plant the seeds for what you want this next year to be. So, invitation to spend some time in quiet contemplation, no matter when you're listening to this, to just really intentionally think about what you want the next year of your life to be. How do you want to show up? What do you want your life to be? Give yourself time and space to dream into that. And if you want to uplevel your business and your client work with bigger results and better results and more embodiment for you, this intuitive somatic healer certification, that's your next step. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now. Until next time.